Hey music fans! As a roadie, I had this great opportunity to tour with all these bands. I wrote a book about my experiences on the road, and it was the #1 new release on Amazon and Bios, and it's now sold millions of copies on Kindle. I'm Joel Roadie, and this is my podcast, Party Like a Rock Star. It's a band called NEMOPHILA. Have we heard of NEMOPHILA?
No, I sure haven't.
This next group of episodes on my Road Dogs and Rock Gods series is Mr. Thomas O'Keefe. Thomas played with the band Antiseen from 1988 to 1995. He's a bass player. Before that, he played with Judas Bullethead. While with Antiseen, he actually played on an album with GG Allin. He's been the tour manager of Train, Sia, Dashboard, Confessional, Mandy Moore, Whiskeytown, Third Eye Blind, and Weezer for many years now with Weezer. He is the author of the book Waiting to Derail, Ryan Adams and Whiskeytown, Alt Country's Brilliant Wreck. His portion of the proceeds of that book actually go to a woman's shelter in Raleigh, in North Carolina. Thomas is a good guy. I think you guys will enjoy him. I like him a lot. And if you guys are interested in learning more about him, I did do an interview with him a while back. You guys can check that out here if you want to. Anyway, let's jump to this. Let's see what Thomas O'Keefe has to say about your favorite band. Let's do this. So this is NEMOPHILA, and I'm a very big fan of these ladies. I think this band's super, super talented. I chose a song called OIRAN. I actually just played it for Willie Chambers from the Chambers Brothers, and he loved it. And so I figured I'd play it back to back with my next guest because I gotta admit, I really like it too. Now, you said earlier that you're not really a big fan of growling and whatnot, and so I don't want to put any opinions in your head, but I am going to ask you what you think because there might be a little bit. So I want to see what you think. So,
all right.
What do you think?
Wow, yeah, they were really good too. I would have to say I prefer the first two.
Okay.
Because that's that band. I mean, but again, they would veer into this new metal thing, but then it would also kind of go a little bit poppy. The choruses seemed like, they would veer into that, but they wouldn't, it wasn't all just that, it felt
Right.
like the choruses were a little bit more like accessible or poppy sounding, and she was singing instead of doing growling like that. But they all could really play. It was pretty amazing,
Uh,
so, and it was obviously a big show. Again, another massive production. I'm surprised I never heard of any of these bands, to be honest with you.
so the singer, I think, of your band, right? He's like a Japanophile, isn't he? Doesn't he?
Yeah, he loves Japan, and they've played there once before, several years ago. They went over. Uh, so yeah, he's always loved it. I mean, which band are you talking about? Antiseen or
Oh, Weezer. Sorry,
Weezer?
Weezer.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Rivers is he's been there a million times. Yeah, but Weezer's played in Japan a bunch of times, many, many times in the last 30 years.
Yeah.
So, but and my old band Antiseen they played in Japan as well, but it was after I was out of the band. They did that like 4 or 5 years ago.
Oh, that's neat. I didn't know that. That's cool.
Yeah.
I love Antiseen. You guys are
Yep.
great.
Yeah, they went over for a couple days and I think they only played two shows and came back.
Yeah. So questions. So one of my favorite questions to ask every music guy or whatever, what's the craziest show you ever did, the nuttiest time? And then you got to have some great stories. Your career has been so diversified from Train to Weezer to punk back in the day. I mean, you've lived music, Thomas, and so I'm
Well,
intrigued.
I've seen a lot of that stuff. I mean, I guess really, I mean, it's impossible to pick one story, but the probably the craziest one was back in Charlotte in the you know what, can we pause for a second? I'm gonna go
Sure.
outside. All
Yep.
right, let me do this. So my craziest story is probably from the mid 90s, and that would be when I was playing in Antiseen. And when you play in a band, you have to have a job where they'll let you off work, so you can go play a week or two's worth of shows and come back and work and go back and forth. So Jeff, the singer of Antiseen, and I had a job at an X-ray machine company, and they would let us off work, so if we would go work there for a couple months, and if we had a 10 days worth of shows, they'd let us off work. We'd go play the shows, come back. So it actually worked out pretty well. So we were friends with this crazy guy named GG Allin, right?
Oh, I
And GG
understand.
Allin, to say he's a crazy guy is an understatement. Like, he's the craziest guy, he's the guy who would, poop on stage and throw it at people. And most of his shows were really not shows. They were more like a 20-minute long car wreck, that was in slow motion. It was like time slowed down, like it was the longest 20 minutes of your life kind of thing. And Gigi we made a record, Antiseen made a record with him, and we knew him, and he would come. We lived in Charlotte. He would come to Charlotte and stay sometimes. So all the people that we worked with at this X-ray machine company, the place was in South Charlotte near the North South Carolina border. So a lot of these people that worked there were from South Carolina, and they were not Charlotte people. They were rural South Carolina people who drove into work, they didn't come to Charlotte very often, except to come to work. Like if any of them had to go to the hospital, they would get me or Jeff to give them directions. Me and Jeff were a couple of the only ones that actually lived in Charlotte. So anyway, Jeff made a videotape of some GG Allin shenanigans, I'll say. And he had this half-hour long videotape of that stuff. And he gave it to one of the guys at work. So the next day, the guy comes in, God damn, losing his mind. This is just some terrible, nasty GG Allin stuff on this videotape. So eventually, all the people that are working at this company all know who he is, right? And they should never have known who he was. You know, it was just kind of insane that they even had any idea who he was, especially this was probably like 1992 or something. So GG was coming into town and we had the big event for in Christmas, and that was the Trans World X-Ray Christmas party, which was the company Christmas party, which was the big event. All the dudes at work could wear their one suit and bring their wife and go to the hotel ballroom and introduce their wife to the boss and all this kind of stuff. And we were like, let's bring GG Allin to the company Christmas party. So we brought him and everyone knew who he was. So when he walked in the door, the whole place just like the record like skipped, like, you know, and everyone was like horrified. You know, and he smelled really bad, and he was like wearing a dog collar, and he had like the cop sunglasses on, his typical GG outfit, you know, that he wore. And so we brought him in, and all these people were horrified, and a couple of them made friends with him, and you know, he just kind of hung around. He actually picked a girl up, believe it or not. I don't know how that happened. And we all got drunk and hung out at this party, and then later that night, I think Jeff and some of the guys that worked at the X-ray machine company took him to a titty bar over in West Charlotte, and this was like 1:30 in the morning, and by then everybody was hammered. I wasn't there for this. And Gigi paid a stripper $5 or $10 to piss in a Dixie cup, and he sat there at the bar with two cups, like a cup of like bourbon and a cup of stripper piss. And he would take a shot, a little sip of the bourbon, and a little sip of the stripper piss. And finally at the end, the bartender's like, last call. And he picked up the cup of stripper piss and killed it.
Oh.
It was just like, and nobody was watching. He wasn't doing this because somebody was filming it. He was doing this because he wanted to do it, which is unbelievable. So, of course, you know, this guy, his primary objective in life was, you know, here we are, he's been dead for 25 years and we're still talking about him, you know, and no one has ever outdone the nasty, horrible, crazy shit that he's done. So he still kind of holds the title as the craziest music, you know, rock singer ever. And
Yeah.
that's what he wanted and that's what he cared about. So he got his wish, you know. But he ended up dying a few years after that. He died of a heroin overdose in New York City. He had like 30 grand in his pocket,
Oh.
and he had bought some heroin, and I guess he did too much or whatever. It doesn't usually come with directions. And he OD'd. They found him dead the next morning. But he was a dummy. He actually wrote a letter to John Hinckley, who was John
Sure.
Hinckley was the guy that shot Reagan, right?
Yeah.
Which I never, in all my punk rock years, I never understood you know, how the punk rock, I loved punk rock and I still do, but I didn't never understood the fascination of like serial killers. Like all these punk rock dudes always want to read about serial killers and read about all that stuff. I never cared about any of that stuff. I just didn't care about it at all. But so Gigi writes John Hinckley a letter. So John Hinckley's in jail for shooting Reagan back in like 81 or whatever. I think it was 81. And he said in the letter to him, hey, man, that was really cool what you did. Maybe if you get out someday, we can team up and try again.
Whoa.
Well, what the fuck do you think happened? So,
Yeah.
so of course he's like in Boston somewhere and he walks out of some business and the black van pulls up and they throw him in the black van like war games or something. And the Secret Service interrogates him for like 3 or 4 hours. So at the time, old man Bush was president. Bush #1 was president. And the Secret Service guys were interrogating Gigi and they were like, what would you do if George Bush was sitting here right now? And Gigi was like, I don't know. I'd buy him a fucking beer. What the hell? I don't know. So after they, you know, questioned him, the Secret Service guy comes in the room and goes, we realize you're not a threat to the president. We just realize you're a fucking moron for writing that letter. But he had some outstanding warrant in Michigan or something. So they ended up, the Secret Service guys sent him to Michigan and he had to go to jail for like a year and a half.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, that wasn't really the smartest thing. You really don't write a letter to somebody that shot a president and say, hey man, it would be really cool if we team up and try it again. Like, that's insane.
Insane.
So yeah, it's, you know, when I'm at a concert and have some problems, or like when I used to work with Whiskeytown and I had to deal with Ryan Adams shenanigans back in the day, 25 years ago, I was just like, this is nothing. I watched GG Allin shit on stage and throw it at people. My bar is very, very high in terms of if you're going to shock me, because I've seen a lot of crazy shit. So that's probably the craziest event that I witnessed, was watching GG, bringing GG to the company Christmas party. That was a good one.
That's a lot.
The craziest part of that story to me is that the next morning, or not the next morning, because I imagine this party was on a Saturday, but like Monday morning, Jeff and I went to work and we didn't get fired. I would have thought for sure we would have gotten fired for doing that, but they didn't fire us. They didn't care. I guess GG was our +1 and that was okay.
Right. I invite you to my Thanksgiving dinner to tell these.
Right. Oh, and he smelled really bad. And I can't believe we did that. When I look back at that now, I just can hardly believe we did that, like what a crazy idea, but it was funny though.
Worked.
I guarantee you all those people that were there remember it as well.
Yeah, I bet they do.
Yeah.
I bet they do. How do you forget this nutty guy?
Yeah.
For the Christmas party, dude.
Well, you know what I realized is that when they met him, he was probably the most famous person that any of them had ever met. He was like a celebrity.
Yeah.
Because they had all seen the videos of him. And, these are people from like Rock Hill, South Carolina. They're not, they're not like me or you hanging out with famous people and being at shows and stuff like that. We're used to that, but these are like regular people from South Carolina. They'd never met anybody famous. And next thing you know, they're getting their picture taken with GG Allin at
all the people to meet.
Right. Yeah. That they kind of got ripped off, but
not really the best way to dip your toe in the famous fountain,
in the famous world. Right.
No,
he was famous though.
Is everybody this bad? Yeah. Yes, they are.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, it made us look better, right? Because at least we took a shower every once in a while. I mean, one time GG flew to Charlotte to record, and I picked him up from the airport and he just smelled so bad. I couldn't believe it. And he had this weird old suitcase that was like a carry-on bag, but it was very old, from like the 50s or something. And he'd written on it in Sharpie really big, I am GG Allin. This is where I live, blah, blah, blah. And I thought about it when I picked him up at the airport, like somebody sat next to him on that plane.
Oh.
I don't, and of course that somebody still remembers that too, because you're just like, when I used to take band photos, like when we made the album with him, we had to do a couple photo shoots with him and take some rounds of photos for the record cover photos. And when we would all get into the picture, I would take a deep breath and hold my breath during the photo.
That bad, huh?
Yeah, he smelled terrible, terrible.
Okay. All right. Do we have time for one more?
Sure. Yeah, let's do it. Let me look at my job. I'm good.
Have we heard of a band called The Warning? They're 3 sisters out of Mexico.
Maybe. Are they young?
They're young.
All right, maybe. Let's take a look at it and see.
All right, let's do it. Hey, the podcast is over. What are you still doing here? Well, while you're here, like and subscribe. Thanks.